All right, today we're going to crack open the blueprint for the US government. And it's a design that was born from, well, a really big fear and a pretty revolutionary idea. It all comes down to solving one massive, tricky puzzle.
I mean, seriously, think about it. This was the razor's edge the founders of the country had to walk. They knew they needed a government strong enough to actually run things, but they were also completely spooked by the memory of the king they had just kicked out. So how on earth do you thread that needle?
While the answer wasn't some single magic bullet, instead what they came up with was this really elegant, interconnected system. They basically engineered a government built on 5 foundational ideas, and each one is a crucial piece of the whole puzzle.
And it's pretty amazing when you stop and think about it. This entire super complex system, the whole architecture of American democracy, it really boils down to just 5 core concepts, all working together in this delicate balance.
So here's the lineup: popular sovereignty, limited government, federalism, separation of powers, and checks and balances. We're going to walk through each one so you can see exactly how they all fit together. Okay, first things first. Before you can start dividing up power or putting limits on it, you have to answer a more basic question. Where does the power come from in the first place? In this system, the answer is actually pretty simple. It comes from the people.
And that brings us to the bedrock of the whole system, popular sovereignty. This idea completely flipped the old way of thinking on its head. See, power doesn't flow down from a king or a queen anymore. Nope, it flows up from the citizens. The government only gets to have authority because we, the people, agree to be governed. We're the ultimate source of all its power.
Okay, so the people grant the government its power. Check. But the very next challenge is making sure that no one person or one group can get their hands on all of it. The solution? A really clever blueprint for dividing it all up.
The first way they slice it is vertically. This is what we call federalism. It splits power between 2 main levels. You've got the central, national government, and then you have all the individual state governments. Each one has its own areas of authority, which creates this fundamental division of power right from the get-go.
But they didn't stop there. Next, they took the power at the national level and divided it horizontally. This is the famous separation of powers. It carves the federal government into 3 distinct branches: the legislative branch, that's Congress, which makes the laws; the executive branch, the president, who enforces the laws; and the judicial branch, the courts, which interpret the laws.
So you can really see the 2-pronged strategy here, right? Federalism gives you that vertical split, power divided between the national government and the states. And then separation of powers creates a horizontal split, dividing that national power between the 3 branches. It's like they built a grid, a checkerboard, specifically designed to keep power spread out and decentralized.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, great, you divided the power up, problem solved. But just splitting it up wasn't enough. The framers were, pretty realistic about human nature. They knew they also needed some active rules of restraint to kind of force each part of the government to stay in its own lane. This brings us to a huge one: limited government. The best way to think about this is like a rule book. It basically says the government can't just do whatever it feels like. It can only use the powers that were specifically given to it by the people in the Constitution. Everybody, and I mean everybody, including the government itself, has to play by the rules.
And this is where the whole design gets really cool and dynamic. Checks and balances. This isn't just some passive rule. It's an active living mechanism. It gives each of those 3 branches specific tools, weapons really, to block or restrain what the other 2 are doing. It basically turns them all into watchdogs for one another.
And this is a perfect example of how it works in the real world. So let's say Congress passes a bill. The president can look at it and use the veto power, basically saying, nope, not so fast. But it doesn't end there. Congress can get together and override that veto if they have enough votes. And even then, the Supreme Court can swoop in at the end and say, you know what? This whole law is unconstitutional. It's a constant, intentional power struggle.
So let's pull back and put all these pieces on the table together. Because these aren't just 5 separate ideas that happen to exist in the same document. They were designed, from the very beginning, to be a single, interlocking system.
You can really see how it all clicks together, can't you? The people provide the power, that's popular sovereignty. That power is then immediately split apart, both vertically and horizontally. Then a rule book is put in place to limit what that power can do. And finally, each piece is given the tools to fight off the others if they try to overstep.
It's this beautiful, complex machine, all designed to hit that one sweet spot, a government strong enough to work, but never strong enough to become a bully.
So yeah, this system was designed over 200 years ago, but it is not just some historical artifact collecting dust. These principles, division, restraint, accountability, they're alive and kicking every single day. They shape every political debate you hear, every new law that gets passed, and every power struggle you see playing out on the news. So the real question isn't just what these principles are, but how do you see them working, or maybe not working, in the world all around you?